UFC Vegas 56 betting and DraftKings breakdown. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. Kicking things off, we have Aaron Blantfield coming in as a massive favorite, minus 490, going up against JJ Aldrich on the comeback at plus 360. And I really like the Blantfield side in this matchup. I don't think that's going to be a hot take this week. She's looked absolutely dominant through 2 of her UFC bouts. And what was really not surprising, but really impressive was her last matchup against Miranda Maverick. A lot of people thought that might have been a competitive bout against 2 exciting prospects in this division, and she just completely dominated her. She has landed 10 takedowns through her 2 UFC fights. She controlled Maverick on the mat for 12 minutes in that fight as well. She's got the solid wrestling for this division. She's a BJJ black belt. The grappling is there as well. And against JJ Aldrich has had success against similar style matchups. She's on a 3-fight win streak. She's fought some similar style opponents like Jillian Robertson and other, weaker, good grapplers, but weak in terms of the wrestling and the athleticism. So she was able to keep those fights on the feet for the most part and get off on her boxing technique. I don't think she's going to be able to do that against Aaron Blantfield here. I think eventually Blanchfield's going to be able to drag her to the mat and really just out-muscle her on the mat. And the grappling, I think, is much better. I think the bigger conversation is whether or not you think Blanchfield can submit her or not. JJ Aldrich has never been submitted in her career. I wouldn't be shocked if Blantfield got the sub, but I am expecting this one to go the full 15 minutes, which is nice for DraftKings because we know she's going to rack up multiple takedowns, bank that control time. The problem is she's $9,600. She's the most expensive fighter on the slate. Because of that, I'm tempted to take an underweight approach to her in the main tournament on DraftKings, even though I know she's probably one of the highest floor or safe plays this week. Next fight up, we have Rinat Fakhretdinov, the UFC newcomer, coming in as a sizable favorite at minus 280. The comeback on Andreas Michailidis is plus 220. And this is a spot where, yes, I understand it's a lot of hype coming in with this unknown prospect. He's got a solid record. He's on a 17-fight win streak, and most of his wins have come early, right? Like, he's only been to the 3rd round twice in his career. He did end up winning those, but he's definitely more of a front runner. His striking's kind of awkward looking, but it tends to work. He knocks a lot of guys out. I believe he has 11 wins by knockout, and most of that is because he just sort of blitzes forward. He has powerful kicks, powerful overhand, but he blitzes forward looking to close distance and get to the takedown. So he's throwing those strikes with a lot of power, but he's immediately following it up with his attempted takedowns. And I think that's going to work here against Andreas Michailidis, who is an okay kickboxer. He does have some okay grappling chops. I believe he's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he landed 2 takedowns against Alex Pereira his last time out. Just ended up eating a dangerous knee in the 2nd round that ended up putting him to sleep. And that's a concern with Michailidis. He's been knocked out 5 times in his career. That's all of his losses have come by knockout. And now he's going up against a guy who is super powerful. He's an exciting prospect who I think is going to be able to have success in the striking, but then also be able to mix in those takedowns if he needs to and bank that control time on the mat, potentially get a finish. He does have some pretty nasty ground and pound. So I know it's a lot to pay for somebody that's making their debut. You know, we're always concerned when we see a lot of big price tags on these type of fighters. In this case, I think it's warranted given the matchup. So give me Fakhretdinov. He's 9,200 on DraftKings. So in builds where you're looking to fade Aaron Blanchfield at 9,600, you're going to need to attack this range in the lower 9K range. And Fakhretdinov fits that mold as a guy that could win by knockout early or potentially mix in a bunch of takedowns and outscore Blanchfield that way. So that's probably going to be the approach I'm taking in at least a few of my lineups. So I'm liking the upside of the newcomer, Rinat Fakhretdinov. Up next in the flyweight division, we have everybody's new favorite prospect in Jeff Molina, minus 180 as a favorite here, going up against Zhalgas Zhumagulov at plus 155 on the comeback. And this is a spot where I'm just looking to fade the hype in a sense, in the fact that people are kind of thinking that Jeff Molina is this next big thing in MMA. And while I do like Jeff Molina, you know, he had an awesome debut fight against Richie Lang, fun fight on Contenders as well, and then followed it up with a finish in Daniel Silva in the 2nd round. So I get it why people are hyping him, but I'm looking to get the other way. And this is why MMA is funny, because Zhalgas Zhumagulov is a guy who was also kind of hyped up coming into the UFC. And I was on the other side of the fence. You know, I didn't really think he was all that great. And now that he's only gone 1-3 so far in the UFC, probably fighting for his job here, I'm kind of on the other side of the fence now, saying that he's probably better than what we've seen, and now people are hyping Molina, thinking that he's probably better than what we've seen as well. So it's kind of one of those buy low spots while fading the hype. And that's what I'm looking to do here, because Jeff Molina, while he does have good boxing, he's got great cardio. We've seen him put the pace on his opponents in the third round when it gets there. Let's not forget, though, he was very dangerously close to dropping 2 rounds to Richie Lang. If he didn't score that knockdown in the last 10 seconds of round 2, he's down 2 rounds going into that final round. And yes, he put on an awesome performance in the third round, but that doesn't change the fact that he was likely going to be down 2 rounds going into the third, maybe lose the decision there. And then I don't think we see this priced at where it's at here. And then on the flip side, Zalgas has fought competitive fights with multiple guys. And yes, he was knocked out by Manel Kape, but Manel Kape is a top 5 guy in this division. I'm not going to knock him too much for that. I think this one comes down to how Zhumagulov plans to fight this, because I think if he comes in with the right game plan and mixes in takedowns and uses that as his only priority here, I think he could have success against Jeff Molina, who was taken down twice on Contender Series by Jacob Silva, who's not a great wrestler. He was taken down 3 times in that Richie Lang fight that I mentioned, who's also not a great wrestler. I think the takedowns will be there for Zalgas if he forces them, and I think he should if he comes in with the right game plan. I think he could bank control time against Jeff Molina. So far, we've seen Molina get back up to his feet, win the striking, but let's not pretend the path to victory is not there for Zhumagulov here, who I think a lot of people are just out on at this point, and I'm willing to take a few shots, at least in the DraftKings market. I'm kind of on the fence of whether or not I should bet him. I wanted a little bit better of a number, and maybe if we see more Jeff Molina come in throughout the week, then I'll get involved, but I'm definitely going to take an overweight stance to Zhumagulov on DraftKings. And then in terms of that 9K range, there's a lot of fighters we like this week. Again, I'm looking to fade the hype on Jeff Molina. I think he's outperformed relative to his skill set. He scored 120 and 130, landed 2 or 3 knockdowns against Richie Lang, another knockdown in his last fight, and the second round finish. I just think he's outperforming relative to what his expectation is in terms of DraftKings, and I think he could actually lose this fight against Zalgas. So at 9K, I'm taking an underweight stance to him, and I'm going to be overweight to the underdog, who I'm hoping is going to be a low-owned play, who I think is a live dog this week. And next fight up in the bantamweight division is what I think is a highly debated fight this week. We have Tony Gravely going up against Johnny Muniz Jr., and Gravely's a small favorite now, -130. A lot of money has come in on Johnny Muniz, making him just a +110 underdog here. And this is a fight where I kind of see Gravely just being the more skilled minute winner in terms of who's going to be winning the majority of this fight until there's a finish, if there is a finish. And that's kind of how I view a lot of Gravely fights. He has all the skills to be a pretty good fighter in this division, in my opinion. He's got solid boxing. He comes from a collegiate wrestling background, and I just think he's going to be able to land multiple takedowns here, bank some control time against Johnny Muniz, who is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He is dangerous on the mat, but he can be controlled on the mat. He will fish off his back. I think Gravely can stay safe in top position. I think Gravely's the more active striker on the feet. He's the better boxer. Muniz just kind of has a couple kicks that he'll throw. Very low volume kickboxer. Not very good striker in terms of minute winning potential here. So I think Gravely's going to be winning most of this fight. The issue with Gravely is his fight IQ at times is not the greatest. His cardio at times is not the greatest. He pushes a crazy pace, but after about 10 minutes of nonstop wrestling and boxing, he tends to gas out. He leaves his neck out there a lot to be submitted. He's been submitted 5 times in his career. 3 of those were inside the first round. So against a dangerous black belt like Johnny Muniz, I understand that's a path to victory for him here, but I still like the Gravely side. I'm not super confident in the sense where I understand that Gravely could be submitted here. He could do something stupid. Historically, he's not very trustworthy, but I just keep going back to he's the much better minute winner in this matchup. Johnny Muniz, in my opinion, is drawing dead to a submission. I do not think he can win a decision here. I don't think he can win by knockout. So it's if Gravely doesn't get submitted, I think he gets his hand raised here. In terms of DraftKings, I'm going to target both sides because I'm expecting either guy to score well. Gravely in a decision win, multiple takedowns, a lot of strikes, possibly a finish. Muniz in a win, probably an early sub. So that's the way I'm playing it. Exposure to both sides with a moderate lean towards the Gravely side. Next fight up, we have Benoit Saint Denis going up against Nicholas Stolze. Saint Denis is a minus 155 favorite. Stolze on the comeback at plus 135. And this is one where Saint Denis is coming off an absolute beatdown against Elias Zaleski dos Santos. I was actually at that fight at UFC 267 in Fight Island. And you guys know as well as I do, most of the fights, if you've ever been to a live UFC event, most of the time fans are crazy. They're just cheering for violence, right? This was actually the reverse of that. There was so much violence in this fight where the entire arena was saying the fight should have been stopped. Everybody's booing the referee. The referee, by the way, ended up getting pulled on that card. He was supposed to referee, I think, 2 later bouts on that same card. And Dana White was like, yeah, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. They pulled him right off the card, gave him the yank. He actually hasn't reffed since for the UFC, I believe. So yeah, it wasn't just a robbery. I did have Dos Santos inside the distance at plus 250 there. I'm still salty about it, as you can tell. But Saint Denis, credit to him, man. He took an absolute beating, and the dude just would not give up. Yes, his corner probably should have thrown the towel in before that, considering the referee wasn't going to stop it. But the dude's super tough. Historically speaking, he's more of kind of a front-running grappler. That was actually the first time he had ever been to a 15-minute decision there. So historically speaking, he usually finds an early submission. That's really most of his fights is early submission. I believe 7 of his 8 wins have come by sub. Definitely more of a grappler. I expect him to probably look to get the takedowns here. He did land a takedown or 2 against Dos Santos, just wasn't able to do anything with it. But Dos Santos, I think, a much better grappler than Nicholas Stolze. It's not that Stolze's a bad grappler, but he can be taken down. He was taken down 4 times against Ramazan Ameev in his UFC debut, and he's never been submitted in his career, but you know, maybe there's a first time for everything. This is a fight that I don't really have a strong read on. It's kind of one of those where I think there's a wide range of outcomes, so I'm going to play it a couple different ways on DraftKings. I do think Saint Denis has early submission upside, but I also wouldn't be shocked to see him just turn out to be not very good. You know, like I do think he's probably got more upside than Stolze, but again, this is one with just a lot of variance, a lot of different ways this one could play out. So I'm not going to take a super hard stance on one way or the other. A little bit of exposure to both sides, just basically trying to have this fight not kill me on DraftKings. But we're going to go with Saint Denis by decision. And next up, we have the biggest favorite on the card currently, Damon Jackson against Daniel Argueta. And you might recognize Daniel Argueta because he fought on this past season of The Ultimate Fighter. He ended up fighting Ricky Tercios, and I was rooting for him in that fight. You know, I thought maybe he could use that wrestling background, ended up losing to Ricky Tercios, but because it was an exhibition match, he's still technically 8-0 as a professional, has been on a 3-fight win streak since he lost to Ricky Tercios on The Ultimate Fighter, and basically all he does is look to close distance, use that wrestling, get into favorable positions on the mat. He does have some power. His striking's kind of awkward, but he is powerful, and when he gets on top, he is able to finish weaker opponents on the mat. The problem is he's going up against Damon Jackson, who is not going to be the weaker opponent. Damon Jackson, I think, kind of has him covered everywhere, and not to mention Argueta is fighting on short notice, coming up a weight class. So I just think Damon Jackson just has him covered here. I think Damon Jackson maybe can get taken down once or twice here if Argueta is able to close distance and take him down. But even in that scenario, I think Jackson's a much better grappler. And I think if Argueta does take him down, I think it's actually going to be Argueta who's in danger on the mat. So give me Damon Jackson here. I think he finds a submission. I think he probably is one of the safest options on the board. And DraftKings hasn't put him on the slate yet, but I'm expecting him to slide right in there at 9,500. So right under Aaron Blantfield. So that's going to be a decision point. You know, whether you go all the way up to 9,600 and play Aaron Blantfield, or $100 less, play Damon Jackson, or maybe you fade them both, drop into that lower 9K range like we talked about. So a lot of key decision points because we have so many fights on this slate, and I love these type of slates because ownership's just naturally going to be more spread out. The more decisions that we have to make, theoretically, the bigger our edge may be. And next fight up, we have Joe Salecki coming in as a minus 170 favorite. The comeback on Alex De Silva is plus 155. And this is a spot where I think maybe people are overreacting Alex De Silva's performance against Brad Riddell. Yes, he looked great in that fight. It was more competitive than I think a lot of us expected it to be. And I'm not completely ruling out the future of Alex De Silva. I think he's a solid prospect. Last time we saw him was in 2020, so there is room for improvement. You know, maybe he looks even better than we saw him last. but I just think the grappling is just levels better on the Joe Salecki side. I think even if De Silva can land takedowns like we've seen him do in a couple of his previous fights, I think Salecki's very dangerous on the mat. Not necessarily in bottom position, but I think he's dangerous enough to sweep and get in favorable positions against Alex De Silva, who is going to be at a grappling disadvantage against the black belt in Salecki. So I like Salecki. I think he gets the submission here. There's always concerns that, when he doesn't get his grappling going, he's not the greatest striker. We saw Jared Gordon expose that in his last fight, but I don't think Alex De Silva is at the level of wrestling or grappling that Jared Gordon is. So I think Salecki's going to find the back at some point, choke him out. Salecki by submission is the official pick, and I think he's a solid play in that upper 8K range as well. And next fight up is the highly anticipated rematch between Felice Herrig and Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Everybody's been pounding the table saying Dana White, Sean Selby, Mick Maynard, we need this rematch. We have to see it. They last fought in 2018. It's been 4 years since then. And what have they done since then? Karolina's been on a 5-fight losing streak. Her last victory came against Felice Herrig in that fight. Felice Herrig, on the flip side, has been on a 3-fight losing streak and has had multiple knee surgeries since then as well. She's coming off a decent-sized layoff herself. So this is a spot where I think both fighters are probably a little bit washed, but at the same time, I do still think Karolina is the side here. Yes, I know it's like a 1-800 gambler fight, as we like to say in this industry, but I did back Karolina Kowalkiewicz by decision at plus 160. I just think she's the better minute winner in this fight. When it comes to the striking, we saw the first time they fought, Karolina is just getting off on a ton more volume. I think Felice Herrig, she comes from the kickboxing background, former kickboxing champion, and she's going to have the power advantage. But you saw in that first fight, Karolina's landing 4 or 5 combinations before Felice Herrig can even land one. And yes, when she does land, it's more powerful, it's more impactful. But, Karolina's just getting off on way more volume. In the clinch, Felice Herrig was able to control her a lot against the fence, but she wasn't able to get her down. And I think in the clinch, it was actually Karolina that was getting off with knees and elbows nonstop in the clinch. She's constantly working, and she's always been a good clinch fighter as well. So I think if she can keep this fight standing like she did that first time around, I do think she's going to be winning the striking exchanges for the most part here. So I actually like Karolina. I don't think either of them have much upside for DraftKings on such a big slate. I think we can kind of just X this one out depending on how many lineups you're playing. Maybe if you max enter 150 lineups, you take a couple shares of 1 or 2 of them. But outside of that, I'm really not going to have much exposure to this fight. I do have a bet on Karolina by decision, but that's basically it in terms of this fight. I do think she wins. I think she gets her hand raised, but overall, it's just a low upside fight for DraftKings this week. And next fight up in the light heavyweight division, we have Alonzo Menafield coming in against Askar Mazarov, and there's been a lot of chatter about this Mazarov prospect. He's making his UFC debut, fighting out of Ukraine, but there's this drama that he used to fight under a different name, legally changed his name just to reset his professional MMA record. I don't know if that's true or not, but regardless, I think the dude's a pretty fraudulent fighter. Basically just has a ton of power, but pretty much no technique, and if he doesn't land something super heavy early, he's probably going to look for a way out. And against Alonzo Menafield, who has a lot of big power himself, 8 of his 11 wins have come by knockout. The biggest knock on Menafield has been his gas tank issues and his fight IQ. He's welcoming the clinch to a lot of these fighters where he probably shouldn't. He's coming off a loss against William Knight that he probably could have won with just a little bit better fight IQ. So he's not somebody that you ever want to trust, but I feel like it would be a pretty big stunt for him to lose this fight. I mentioned the power of Mazarov. He has big, powerful, flashy leg kicks. He dropped his last opponent, I think, with 2 nasty low calf kicks, ended up dropping him, finishing on the mat. That's really his path here, is maybe he lands a big kick, maybe he lands a powerful hook shot and catches Menafield. Outside of that, this dude's getting knocked out. The under 1.5, I think, is steamed to minus 165 or minus 180 we have up on the screen, so I should have just looked there. So under 1.5 is minus 180. That right there should tell you that this fight is expected to end early, likely in the first round, which means the winner is probably going to be a target for you on DraftKings. I favor the Menafield side, but I'm not completely ruling out Mazarov just getting lucky, landing a big punch early or something like that. But I'm definitely going to be heavier on the Benefield side. It's just one where maybe across 10 lineups, you go 8 Benefield and 2 Mazarov, just on the slight chance that he does land one of those big kicks. So give me Benefield by knockout. That's the official pick, and that's the way I'm going to play it on DraftKings. Next fight up, we have another flyweight bout. I love the flyweight division. They always put on fun fights. This should be another one here. We have Ode Osborne at the minus 180 favorite. The comeback on Zaruk Adashev is plus 155. And I like Ode Osborne. I think he has some tools we could be excited about here, but I also think there's holes in his game as well. It's just a question of if Zaruk Adashev could take advantage of those. And I really don't think he does here. Zaruk Adashev, just a 4-3 prospect, previously fought over in Bellator. He's not as bad as maybe his record would suggest at just 4-3. You know, he is a technical kickboxer. He is improving. He looked decent his last time out. But let's not forget, like, he's going to be much shorter in terms of the reach. He's giving up 8 inches of reach here. It's going to be difficult for him to close distance, I think, against Ode Osborne, who's long, very athletic, very quick. He's got a lot of burst. And Ode Osborne won a decision in his last fight. Prior to that, his last 8 fights ended inside the first round. So now we're seeing like fight doesn't go at minus 110. I'm kind of interested in that, and I'm gonna wait to listen to my guys on the best bets roundtable. For those that don't know, every Saturday of a fight card at noon, we have a best bets roundtable on my channel where I bring in a bunch of your top favorite handicappers around the industry, and basically we just all talk about our best bets for the card. I'm wondering if this fight doesn't go, or any sort of under in this fight might be on anybody else's radar this week, but it's certainly on mine. I don't know if I'm going to bet it yet, but I'm definitely leaning towards that route, just because Ode Osborne is typically like a front runner, but then also his cardio's not great. Yes, he got his hand raised in the decision last time out, but we saw him slow. And against a guy like CJ Vergara, who does have good cardio, who outlanded him in the third round, if Ode Osborne can't get Zaruk Adashev out of there early, I think this could get a little bit dicey over 15 minutes, but Adashev just doesn't throw a ton of volume, and he's not going to grapple either. So it's like, what are you really doing for me? So I do still think Ode Osborne has a lot more upside here in terms of an early finish, and I do think he probably gets his hand raised even if it goes the full 15 minutes. I just think it might play out a little bit closer than these odds suggest if it gets forced out of that first round. So give me Osborne by knockout. I do think Adashev is maybe we're trusting his durability a little bit too much. He was knocked out. He was dropped in his last fight against Ryan Benoit. So, you know, I'm not ready to say he's chinny yet, but I also am not ready to say he's not chinny, right? So give me Osborne by knockout. Hopefully he gets that first round finish, because I do think he's got more upside on DraftKings this week. Next fight up in the women's flyweight division, we have Karine Silva minus 120 going up against Poliana Botella on the comeback at plus 100. And this is one where I have another bet for this fight. I have Botella money line plus 100 for a unit. I think this is a spot where Botella it's just kind of a buy low spot, right? Like, she hasn't looked good historically speaking. She's not really somebody that we can trust, and she just tends to fade. She has a major gas tank issue. She always comes out strong early, typically looks good in the first round, and then basically cardio falls off a cliff. The grappling really isn't there either. Yes, she's a powerful striker, but if she can't grapple and if she doesn't have the cardio, she's going to be in some problems against some of these better fighters. The problem is Karine Silva, I don't really think is a great fighter. She's 14-4. All 14 of her wins have come inside the distance, but I just think she's getting a little bit too much respect here, coming off the finish on Contender Series. Now she's a favorite. You know, Dana White Contender Series favorites, you know, in their UFC debut is not really something that I'm looking to back here. So I'm on the other side here on Botello. I think this is going to be a strong first round for Botello. I think Karine Silva, yes, she's powerful. She's going to be a little bit bigger in there. She does have a powerful right hand. She does have a nasty front kick that she'll look. But outside of that, like, she's very low volume on the feet. And I talked about the cardio issues on the Botella side. Karine Silva has terrible cardio from what I've seen. Like I mentioned, she's only been to the third round twice in her career. Both of those times she ended up losing, and mainly due to cardio. Like we saw in the Contender Series, even after a first round, which yes, it did have a little bit of pace there, but it's not like she was throwing a ton of strikes or landing a ton of strikes. She's completely gassed after one round. Like, she ends up getting the submission, but she wasn't really winning that fight, in my opinion. She ate some huge shots in that fight and ended up pulling off the submission. I think that's how she can win against Botello here, but that's not something I'm looking to back at a favorite price tag. I'm on the other side on Botello. I think Botello can win round one here, and yes, she has cardio issues, but I think Silva has just as bad, if not worse, cardio issues. So I'm willing to buy low on the patella side. I think she gets the job done here. I backed her for a unit at plus 100. And this is actually a sneaky fight to target on DraftKings because I'm eyeing that under 2.5 in the plus 150 range. I mentioned Silva, all of her wins came inside the distance, only reached the third round twice. Botello has a bunch of knockouts on her record. She's very powerful. I think both of them could gas and the other could just capitalize. This could be a sloppy, gassy, low-level fight that just racks up points on DraftKings, and it's the 8K and 8,200 fight. So this could be a make or break pivot point in terms of your DraftKings lineups this week. So I'm actually looking to get overexposed to this fight really on both sides, but definitely lean towards the UFC vet in Poliana Botello. Next fight up, we have Michael Cerzano coming in as a minus 225 favorite. The comeback on Lucas Almeida making his UFC debut at plus 185. You guys probably recognized Lucas Almeida because he fought on Contender Series last season. He ended up facing Daniel, the Golden Boy Zellhuber. I did a breakdown on that fight. Go check it out. Dana White Contender Series, I believe it was week 5, I want to say, last season. So I dive pretty deep into these Contender Series prospects. Feel like I have a decent read on him as a fighter. I think he can make this fight more competitive than these odds suggest. I do respect the technical kickboxing game of Michael Cerzano. He can wrestle a little bit as well, even though he never uses it inside the octagon. But on the flip side, Almeida, I just trust him to be more active here. The volume is always a concern on the Cerzano side, to where I just don't really see him covering a minus 225 price tag here. I don't think he has upside to finish Almeida, who is super tough. He is going to come and bring it to him. He is going to be the more active fighter as well. So I'm looking to get overweight to the underdog in Lucas Almeida here. I'm not going to bet him, but I might bet him in the scorecards no action market or decision no bet on FanDuel. So what that means is if it does go 15 minutes, then the bet is voided. So it's a push. But if there's a finish on either side, I have Lucas Almeida, and he's actually an underdog in that market as well, which I think is probably just wrong. Cerzano's just not much of a finisher historically, and Almeida has a ton of finishes. He's a solid grappler. I believe he's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's an okay wrestler as well. He's willing to fight in the phone booth, bite down on the mouthpiece, and he is pretty powerful. So I don't mind Almeida here. I'm definitely going to take an overweight stance to Almeida, and I don't think Cerzano really has all that much upside. So I'm willing to just kind of go the other way and back Lucas Almeida here. And next fight up is a very exciting fight in the featherweight division. We have Movsar Evloev, minus 410 favorite, going up against Dan Ige on the comeback at plus 310. And Movsar Evloev, he seems to have all the skills, right? He's a 15-0 prospect, never lost. It has been a little bit dicey at times in the UFC where he's won most of the minutes, but he can be hurt. He's been in some dicey positions on the mat as well. But credit to him, he's fought through basically all the adversity that he's faced up to this point. It doesn't mean the loss isn't coming. It's just that I don't think it's coming against Dan Ige. Dan Ige is he's a very good fighter. I just don't think he's a great fighter. And I think Evloev has the potential to be a great fighter here. And I just think what it comes down to here is the gap in terms of the wrestling. Dan Ige only defends takedowns at 55%. We know Evloev is going to be able to close distance. And where I expect the striking to be competitive with Evloev, mixing in the kicks, decent boxer. Ige's definitely a good boxer in his own right. Very durable as well. But when it comes to the grappling, I just think Evloev is just on another level. I know Ige's a black belt, but he can't defend takedowns. He's shown he can be controlled on the mat, even in as recent as his last fight as well. And that's what I keep going back to here is I'm expecting Evloev to land multiple takedowns, to bank that control time, and ultimately to get his hand raised here. The price is big. I'm not going to bet him at the money line. Nowhere near even thinking about that. But I do think he's a pretty safe play in terms of DraftKings. I do think he has a pretty decent floor and upside combination here. So give me Evloev by decision. That's how he's won all of his fights in the UFC. That's how I'm expecting him to win this fight as well. Which brings us to our main event. We have Alexander Volkov, a minus 150 favorite, going up against Biggie Boy Jairzinho Rozenstruik on the comeback at plus 130. And I know everybody hates heavyweight fights. I'm not a huge fan of them either, but this should be a decent fight for as long as it lasts. If it doesn't go a full 25 minutes where it's low volume, Rozenstruik isn't letting his hands go, I can see that happening, but I'm just kind of hoping it doesn't play out that way. I think Volkov, he's making a quick turnaround, coming off the first round submission loss to Tom Aspinall, pretty much looked terrible in that fight, and I think he's at the point in his career now where he's not really at that elite level. We've seen him, especially when he's facing the elite tier, those elite athletes, Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gane, Curtis Blades. Like, he's just not at that level. He can't fight at that level. It's just a question of, do you think Jairzinho Rozenstruik is there as well? And I'm not sure if I do, but what Rozenstruik does have is excellent kickboxing. He's going to mix in the calf kicks. He's got strong calf kicks, and he's a good counter striker. The question is he going to be able to find the chin of Volkov? And he has 25 minutes here to do that. I think if he doesn't, and he ends up just playing that usual wait for the big counter shot and is unable to time it, then he's going to lose a 25-minute decision here or potentially get finished late. Volkov's very long and rangy. He can fight behind his jab. He's pretty durable. He's been knocked out once back in the day, I think in Bellator, and then he was dropped once in the UFC. So I think it wouldn't be impossible for Rozenstruik to win by knockout here. That's what I'm actually rooting for, because I just think Volkov is just kind of hard to trust at this stage in his career. And even in a victory, I don't think he really has a ton of upside here. He's not going to grapple. He's not like super powerful, outside of like, I think it was the Walt Harris fight, the last time we really saw him put on a high upside performance in terms of DraftKings scoring. So this is one where I think there's just a wide range of outcomes, right? Like, there could be a finish on either side because it's heavyweight. There's naturally more variance in a heavyweight style fight. But then on the flip side, I'm also, I'm not ruling out the fact that this could be a low scoring fight regardless of who wins. So I'm going to have probably half of my teams have some sort of action on the main event. Maybe half the teams don't, because I just think there's a ton of ways this can go. I'm just basically looking for it not to kill me, not take a hard stance either way. But I'm rooting for Biggie Boy to get that knockout finish. Been rooting for him for a while. Hopefully he comes through for us, but only time will tell. And as always, you can find multiple tools and resources for MMA DFS players and sports bettors on my website, fightnumbers.com. You can find that in the description below. Do me a favor, like this video, subscribe to my channel as I continue to bring you more UFC content every single week. We got a big stretch of 10 fight cards in a row, and it starts with this weekend. Let's get it.